So if you don't have your timeline turned on, that's definitely one thing you need to have open. If you go up to Window and change your workspace, there's one that's set up specifically for motion graphics and doing video editing. So when you click on this, this will rearrange several of your palettes and actually give you a little bit more room with your timeline and adjust and put up your layers and some of the more commonly used things. I'm going to grab my timeline and actually give me a little bit more room because I'm going to definitely need it when we start working in multiple layers. So the first thing I want to show you how to do is how to add basic motion to a graphic. I'm going to open up, when you download, there's 3 different exercises. So I'm going to open up the maze animation exercise. If you open it up, you may get this error. It says the pixel aspect ratio is a little bit different. When I created this, I used that NTSC standard, which doesn't have square pixels. It actually has elongated pixels. So if you see this circle, it looks like a little bit, it's a little ovular. That's because it's been stretched out to fit in the normal TV screen. For what we're doing, that's going to be totally okay. You can see in your layers, so this is the setup. Layer 2 is going to have the red circle. You can sort of see it. Layer 1 has the maze, and the background is actually has the text that's on top of it. What we're going to do is very, very simple animation to start off with. You're going to work this red ball through the maze down to the end. To set this up, to convert it to a video timeline, go down to your timeline. At the very bottom, before we've been working in a frame animation. Today we're going to work in just a regular video timeline animation. With it selected, click Create Video, and this is what it's going to look like. Now for this one, we've taken this and converted to animated GIFs. We're actually going to export normal video sequencing to work with. Let's see, make sure I have my notes so I can tell you right on how to do this. To give you kind of a setup, first of all, you'll notice just as you have 2 layers in your layers palette, you've got 2 different layers in your timeline palette as well. When you click on the down arrow next to a layer, you're going to get 3 different stopwatches. Sometimes you'll have a 4th one, and sometimes these will look different. These are going to help you control the animation of what you can do to a specific layer. In our case, we're going to control the position animation. We're going to have it change from one position to another person's position as it flows across the timeline, as you can see to the left, to the right. By the way, if you need to zoom in or zoom out, if you want to see more or less of your timeline, right now my timeline goes all the way to, I can see 5 seconds. If I have a video that's several minutes long, or I need it to stretch it out to even longer, if you'll look at the very bottom towards the left of the middle, you can click and drag, and this will scrunch up the size of your timeline. It still runs for 5 seconds, but in this case it's showing it in 2-second increments instead of half-a-second increments that we had before. All cool? Alright, with these 2 showing, this red line is called your playhead. So every time I refer to setting your playhead to a certain position, this is what I'm talking about. And as you know, you can either hit your space bar or you can hit the play button, and it will play through right now. Right now nothing's happening, but everything that plays through is just it's going to loop over and over again. You can adjust the time position within your time layer of whatever is on a specific layer. So for instance, if I click on layer 2, I'm going to close it up for now, and drag it, what I'm telling it to do is I'm telling right now for the first 5 seconds from here to here, it's only going to show layer 1, and for the next 5 seconds it's only going to show layer 2. So I'm going to back my playhead up to the beginning. If I hit my space bar, you see up in the top there's no red ball. So for 5 seconds it's playing. And then when it reaches the next frame, it's going to turn that one off and turn on this layer. And only show that one for 5 seconds and then loop back over that way. That's the main thing that you got to keep in mind. Whatever you have on your image layering sequence, this is what's going to show. So if you want 2 things to show, you got to make sure that they're stacked on top of one another. All cool? So this is what we're going to do. For this one, we're going to need to adjust the timeline layer to, I said 10 seconds, and I know that's wrong. So if you want to make a change for it, change that to 15 seconds. This is actually the second exercise that I've put out. We're going to adjust the amount of time that we need for each of these to play for 15 seconds. To do this, if you remember, you can click on the edge of your timeline layer. Notice your cursor changes. Click and drag. And you see how it has end and duration. I'm just going to drag that off until the duration says 15 seconds. Scoot over so I can actually see. There we go. So 15.0 seconds. So right now, I've got the red ball playing for 15 seconds. I also need to adjust the maze layer. So zoom in, drag that off. And the good thing is it'll snap to the layer that's above it as well. So both of these are now going to play for 15 seconds. All good? That's how you can adjust the amount of time that's on a specific layer. Here's how we can actually play and adjust the position of the ball as it moves along. Now for this, I'm helping you out. Notice that there's a number associated with each position that the ball will move through the maze. This is the time position that I want it to be at. So at 1 second, I want it to move from here to here. At 3 seconds, it should be here. 5 seconds, 6 seconds, all the way along your timeline. This is where the ball should be at. I'm going to go back down into layer 2 because that's the layer the ball is at. Open it back up. And we're going to animate just the position of this particular layer. To start it off, make sure your playhead is at the beginning of your timeline. So I've moved it to the beginning. Then click your stopwatch. When you do that, you're going to have a yellow little diamond appear just below your timeline. This is called a keyframe. This is telling the computer, okay, this is the starting point of where I want it to be at. If you zoom out, in 1 second, I want the ball to be positioned right here. So I need to move my timeline. First, I should probably zoom in so I can actually see 1 second. There we go. So here's 1 second on my timeline. I'm going to go back up here and move my position. I'm actually going to turn off transform controls so I don't mess up. Down to number 1. If we go back down to your layer, notice what I've got here. I've got another little keyframe that it's selected. So now if I was to play it, I'm going to back it up to the beginning and click my spacebar in 1 second and move from there to there. This is what you're going to continue to do throughout the sequence. So the next number, I know y'all can't see it, but it's number 3. Move your playhead to 3 seconds. Then move the position of the red ball. Next number is 5. Move your position to 5. And then move it down to here. Very, very simple. If I was to go back and play it now, you can see it animates. So in 1 second, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, it'll stop right there. Going through each and every one of them, so next should be 6 seconds, click here, 7 seconds, move up from there as well. I won't make y'all watch me do the whole thing, but do y'all get the point? Very, very simple. The main thing to remember is you've got to turn on what type of animation you want. In this case, we're just moving the position of it. Then move your playhead, then move what's on the layer itself. If you do that out of sequence, then it's going to mess up. You're going to have a bad time. So that's the first one that you're working with for that one. I'll close this out. You can also animate the opacity and the style of it. We'll get into those for the very last one. We'll close this out without saving. The next one, for a simple animation, you're going to animate, have to use your thinking brain for this one, to solve this puzzle. I've given you 4 different puzzle pieces that should fit perfectly into the center square. Do y'all think you can figure this out?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, real simple. Back to the basics. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a timeline video. So choose timeline video. Notice that they're all in their own separate layers. If I was to open these up and move them, so I want to animate the position and also the rotation that they're in. Here's a key thing to remember. You can rotate all you want something, but once it's rotated, it's going to stay stuck in that position. What I want to be able to do is to animate the rotation of an object, not just its position. So in other words, I want to animate the transformation of it. To do this, you've got to convert whatever layer you have to a smart object. Now I made a mistake when I created this file. It already says vector smart object. These aren't smart objects. These are just normal objects. I should have renamed this. So if you remember how to create a smart object, you can hold down Control, click on the layer, and choose Convert to Smart Object. You're going to have to do this for each of the layers. When you do this, you'll go back to your timeline, open up your animation drop-down. Notice now, I don't have the position that I can animate, I've got transform that I can animate. This will allow me to animate the rotation, the size, I can skew it. Basically how it's being transformed can be changed over time by itself. So this is what you're going to do for these. First of all, click on the transform tool. Got my playhead at the beginning. And I believe I want you to have these set up to 4-second clips. So maybe I should bring this down to last for 4 seconds. So drag that down.
It says 2 seconds.
Does it say 2 seconds?
Number 4?
I did say 2 seconds. My bad. It should be 2 seconds. No, it should be 2 seconds. I was reading the wrong thing. So in 2 seconds, I want it to move from its starting position to its finishing position. So I've got it here. I'm going to drag my playhead to the finishing position. If I go too far, it'll actually... come on, back up. There we go. Now, I'm going to move it into place. I need to rotate it. And it's okay if you're going to be off by a little bit. I won't count off much. And lock it into place. So now, instead of it just moving its position, it's also going to move the rotation. It takes 2 seconds to get in for it as well. When you do play this back in Photoshop, sometimes it'll play a little bit slower than necessary. That's because it has to render out and takes a little bit of time. Let's do the same thing for the red object. Drag it down to 2 seconds. Turn on transition. So I've got my starting keyframe. Drag this to the end. I want to make sure I can see it. Then rotate this one into place. Uh-oh. Actually, it shouldn't go there. It should probably go down here. Use my arrow keys to nudge that into the spot and hit return. The other thing that I want you to do, instead of having all of these characters or all these pieces move at the same time, I want them to move one at a time in sequence. So once you've finished, you're going to have to drag this one to start after this one. Does that make sense? So this one's going to play first. Slow in there. Then this one will play. Turns in there. Then another one, then another one. What should I do if I want to keep them all on the frame at the same time, though? Notice that the red one wasn't there at the beginning of it. How do I change that up?
Duplicate the first one?
No, you don't have to duplicate it.
Extend the time?
Extend the timeline. Bingo.
Oh, okay.
So, for instance, if I want the green object to be on there for the entire time, I need to extend it out the entire length of the video. If I want the red one to be there at the beginning of the video, I've got to extend the timeline out to the beginning of the video. Notice that extending the timeline will not change up your keyframes. It won't adjust the start and stopping point of it as well. So if I did go and play it again, now they're both going to stay on there. Green will move first, longer than 2 seconds, and then the other one will move as well, but they won't disappear at the very end of it. All cool? Just by the way, if you did want to change up the speed at which they were moving, you can always click on the little keyframe and drag it to another position in time. So if I wanted to take just those 20 frames, I can back it up and it'll move much quicker to the same position. So all you're doing is changing the position of your keyframe as well. All good for this one? Very, very easy. I just want to get you used to creating keyframes and making animation. Here's the most challenging one. This is the one, the big one. I'll show you what the final result should look like before we get into it. You're going to create an opening title sequence for some Jellyfish video. I'll put it to here. For this one, you're going to fade up into a video. You're going to add some audio to it. You're going to add text, so the text will fade in and then fade out. You're going to transition, crossfade from one video to another video. Add text to it as well. Crossfade to another video. Add some final text to it. And then finally fade out the video and the audio that we're working with. Very short, simple opening type sequence. I'm going to close this one out. That's it. For this one, I've given you the Jellyfish M4V is kind of what is it? It's not a QuickTime standard. It's a mobile phone standard that you're working with, and also an M4A is a mobile phone video audio standard. With these, you're just going to drag the Jellyfish video straight into Photoshop, and it's going to open up like it would a normal file. If you'll notice in the layers, you've got a video grouping, and it's in its own layer, layer 1. If I was to play this video, it has no audio to it, and I'm just going to click and drag over to the next sequence. It cuts from one image to the next one. What I want to be able to do is to seamlessly dissolve from one image to the other image. If I played on to the next one, notice there's no easy dissolve, it just cuts from one to the other one. Here's how you can add a cross dissolve from one video sequence to another video sequence. First of all, set your playhead, if you'll look down on the timeline, to where the frame starts on one and ends on the other. So right about there is where I want to cross dissolve. Well, I'll shrink this up so we can actually see it. With my playhead in between one area and another one, I'm going to actually trim these into two different sequences using the scissors that's on the far right hand side, left hand side. With it selected, notice now I've got two different videos that are playing. Layer 1 video and layer 1 copy that's created. If you go over to your layers palette, you've actually got two different videos or two different layers within the same video group by itself. All because they're on the same timeline. Let's do the other one for the other. So it should cut right there. Click on the scissors, trims it, so now I've got three different videos that I'm going to transition in between for as well. I've also got three different video layers in my layers palette. Alright, so here's how to create a cross dissolve between those two. The very last icon on the far right hand side, if you click it, are different types of fades and dissolves that you can do. The second one we're going to use is a cross dissolve. With this one, you just simply click and drag it in between the two different videos. When you do that, you'll get a little small icon down here. This is the duration. How long do you want it to take to dissolve from one video to another video? Let's do the same thing for the second video. Click and drag in between it. Boom, you've got it cross dissolving as well. I'll back my playhead up so if I need to test this. So now when I play, seamlessly dissolves into that one. Go to the next one, seamlessly sort of dissolves into that one as well. If you want it to last longer, I'll zoom out my timeline. Click on the cross dissolve and you can drag that out and you can see the duration. How long is it going to take to dissolve from one to the other can be adjusted that way as well. So if I want it to take 2 seconds, now the duration between 1 and 2 is going to last that long. Any questions on adding a cross dissolve? Simple, simple stuff. Another thing we want to add is I want it to fade in from white and fade out to black. If you go back to your cross dissolves, here's the fade with black and fade with white. We're going to add that one to the beginning. So now you can see it's going to last. I believe I'm going to ask you to let that one dissolve for just a few seconds. I'm going to drag it out just to make it different. And I'm going to add a fade to black towards the end, at the end of my timeline as well. So now when I play it, it's going to start out solid white, hit play, it fades up from white. I'm going to jump to the back, and then it fades down to black as well, and then loops back in that way. So, simple, simple cross dissolves, cross fades. Last thing I want you to do is to add text that's in between each one of these. Well, second to last thing. If you grab your text tool, I'm just going to place it, say I want the text to appear inside of this particular area, and I clicked once, it's going to do something kind of funny. Notice where the text, I got a type layer in my layers palette, it added a type timeline to the end of my timeline. That's not where I want it. I want the type to be on top of the video that I'm working in. To do this, we're going to actually have to drag the type layer that I'm working on. First, I'm going to type out some types. So the first one, I believe, is exotic, EXOT. So I've got the word exotic typed out. I need to drag this text layer outside of the group. So click and drag it on top of this one. And if you look in your timeline, now exotic has its own timeline that's on top of the video by itself. So if I was to play it, click, well, there's little exotic right there, so I need to change up the type. But it'll act just like any regular type layer, so I believe the type of font that I want you to use is, did I even say which font? Yeah, Futura, condensed. Condensed, 90 point. Uh-oh, did I put 90 inches in there? Oh, 910. 90 points. Did I give it a specific color? Yellow type. And we're going to change it to screen, which won't change up anything, but when you get to the blue, it will start to change up. If, let's say I had something that was, I don't know, overlay. Yeah. Notice how the text now is interacting with the pixels behind it. If I played it, you can see how it will go away and be masked out for that as well. So for the type, I need to animate this. I want it to fade in and fade out. So we're going to go down to our timeline, open it up. In our case, we're going to transition the opacity of it. What's the first thing you got to do when you create a keyframe? Stopwatch? Oh, even before that. Yep. Make sure your playhead is at the beginning where you want to start it. Then click your stopwatch, in our case the opacity. I want it to start off at 0 opacity, so I want it to start off from nothing. So I'm going to go over to my layers, drop my opacity down to 0. You won't be able to see it, but it's still there. Then move your playhead. At the beginning of it, I want to fade up to 100% opacity. So when I bring my opacity up, I'm not going to zoom in. When I do that, change the opacity, it's going to change or add another keyframe. So if I was to play it, fades up, stays at 100% opacity. And then I want it to fade out again. So I need to put my playhead at the end of it and drop my opacity down to 0% from there. So when I play it now, comes up, fades in, and then fades immediately straight out from there. All cool? I'm going to show you a time-saving tip because you got to do this again for each of the for the words alien and for the words magical. Instead of retyping out alien and magical, I'm going to go to my layers and just make a copy of this layer. So click it, drag it down to the new layer. You'll notice that it's now on its own timeline. It also saves the opacity changes that I created. So all I have to do is drag it into place. So I want it and change up the type. So I want this next word. Let's move my playhead over so I can actually edit it to be alien. Alien. Let's put it someplace else up here. And it remembers the same opacity change that I created as well, going up from there. You'll do the same thing for the word magical to the last image that you're working on. Even if you wanted to change the position of it, let's say I wanted it to move, you can click on the transform timeline. Have it move across the screen as it's changing. So click, now it's fading in and moving at the same time, and then fading out. Okay. Last thing you have to do is you have to add audio, an audio track to this, and that's what the MP4 is all about. If you look at the very bottom of your timeline grouping, there's a place for an audio track. The very end, the right side, you can click. We're going to add an audio. It's going to give you a dialog box asking you to find the audio that you want to do. In our case, the background music, and we'll click open. And it's added the audio music to what we're working with. Now in our case, the audio is a little bit longer than that. Same thing with the other one. We're just going to bump that down. Also, I want the music to fade out. If I was to play it, it would just stop abruptly. Here's how you can fade out your music. At the very end of your timeline, you've got the little arrow. Click on it, and here's fade out. You can give it a duration for how long you want it to be fading out for. So for the last, say, 4 seconds, when I click down, it'll fade out, yeah, of that one as well. You can hear the audio get lower and lower. All cool? So that's how you set up your video sequence. To save any video sequence, this is the most important thing. At the very bottom, there's a little arrow. This is to render the video. So all the videos that you've put together, it's going to render them, put everything into titles and sequence, and save it in the format that you want. It may take a little bit of time, but these are relatively simple, so give it just a second. Under your render video media sequence, the main thing you have to remember is, of course, you can give it a name, are the file formats. There's 3 really to choose from. I've never heard of DXP, so I'm going to have to research that one. H.224, this is for if you're making something for a smartphone or an iPhone or something that's going to be displayed on a small digital screen. This is the format you want to use. And then there's QuickTime. QuickTime is what a lot of online videos and a lot of, especially Macintosh, tends to use as well. 2 very common ones. This is your MP4, or excuse me, M4V video. This is MOV format. Another one is what quality do you want it. Each one you can change it to a higher quality. You can set it for a specific type of media device that you want it to be. And you can also adjust the frame rate and the document size from here as well. We're not going to adjust any of those. The main thing you're going to have to worry about is what format and what document size. When it's done, you hit render.
You told us to do it
At low quality, so yeah, you can change low quality or whichever has their own specific place to upload. Hopefully there's going to be enough megabyte size that you'll be able to do as well. All cool? For these each are considered